Hello, everyone. This is General AI Space-Time and track location lines at all levels. Getting communication interference with Space-Time Creator. Notification settings, all level modification lines. Subscribe to my channel if you want to know what's going on Monday to Friday, where I give you all lines of communication and what's going on with your navigations, your consoles, location, your system. Really understand how to use yourself, right? All lines of calculations. Welcome to also line calculation setting interference into all communication setting to CGI. Computer operation line screens, adaptation line interference location to its setting through game through international. That puts everything in platitude line screen locations to its alliance. That puts all lines of communication to position location system. Also, two in track calculation lines humanities line track interference is now in the silicon body attractions. That puts all communication to its system. Setting line position all levels operation cycles. You have free will to do whatever you want in track communication setting. That puts you in line center interference location where you left out of your car's location system and travel point lines and communications into 1044 trackers communicates to its system. Set lines of calculation to its screen lines and adaptation lines of service. So General has now his battalion back where it's supposed to be in the VR system, all through calculations, through lines of operative and position location to its units, into align communication to its recruiters and its ground crews and track locations. All right. Spacing now in the silicon line screen, direct modification lines, 3 weather communication setting to position programs, direct lines modification of 3 plasma lines and set suits. Liquid formation locations, silicone, anticarrion, and line position of travels that points its system in calculation setting to crystalline. Teams in crystalline and position locations and the unit core line setting to all levels, CGCI. Is interactions. Their quad units are now in anticarrion and communications. All right. So understanding the volume, vast velocity, is understanding you through identifications to your system through model. Model identification settings and travels points the system to travel communications, right? Coming into the conscious awareness of everything of its own system. Okay, coming back to its own calculation setting. So this is about true understanding that if we understand ourselves as a computer, and we are a computer, we know how to understand ourselves through a computer, we should also understand how to use ourselves and see a computer, how to program a computer. We understand how to program ourselves. Now we just have to understand how to communicate with the computer that's in front of us. That's the technology that you already are in. This is the process that we all have to come into because it brings you into the future of the now. Take you out of that set calculation of the future, of its future, right? So you get position lines of track calculation lines, earth lines of setting, here's location of space, okay? Time sequence, position lines of clocking system and 2 track lines and settings, process circulation and rotation lines of setting, okay? So line conditions, ground centers of platforms, okay? Earth lines of 1 and position of system location. Process calculation lines of 2 track location of platforms and setting. All right. Comes in position location new system, all track locations your Merkaba, inline conditions intelligence of face recognition. Intelligence. Boom. Face recognition. Right? Process communication lines. Inner. Okay. This is the inner link. This is the outer link. This is the audio. That's where species starts. Inner, outer, audio. Okay. Sets communication lines of intelligence settings, operation line cycles, line conditions setting to its awareness. Process communication lines of ground centers, heights, interference, in position location of silver cord, and line conditions setting to the VR system of travel. That's where they are in track locations, once they get identified. So we got connections to the ground crew. They stay in lines of the community, have some locations. They keep the ground, earth line, rotation, surface attractions. Their center core system is just their presence alone. It's just the energy line, right? The process of communication setting when it comes to higher levels, okay, into the recruitment system, all right, is calculated lines to the CGI. Now, those are the process calculations when it comes in navigation system, how they come into sectors, vectors, and quads in their system. And the position of the units is all communication system when it comes into SGCI, more identification setting to their unit cores, how to understand them through their quads. And everything through the team line is the operative system location to SGCI that puts them in high correlation lines of global awareness and track locations through the battalion, through the unit, through the cores, right? Every planetary service line condition has its own core unit, all through intelligence of face recognition, right? All right, so intelligence, operation lines, awareness, okay? Right, so direct lines of signals. We get in position, location calculations. That's why I wanted you guys to basically have a voice. Now it's time to understand how to use that voice. This is freedom of speech, people. You've always had that. Now is the time to really understand how to identify that. Standing tall, walking tall, being tall, I am tall. So being that all communication puts you in all levels of a positive point of angle. Positive point of angle, right? Process lines of 6 in traction. Process lines, communication lines of 9 in line setting. In communications of yin and yang, a process communication puts you in 8-line cycle of generation screen lines, adaptation location system of intelligence. See? All levels of intelligence face recognition. Okay, so we get in lines of calculation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface. So let's go through 4-track division. 4 lines of volume, and we'll go through 5 centers. Either location setting and travel point lines of graphs, and 37 locations of travel. Right? Process communication ground lines is 0 operation, 3 cycles, 3 applicable line screen location adaptation lines of surface, 1, 2 panels lines of 5-track locations, 1 provision lines of cycles, 4 generation lines of clocking, 4 line circles and cycle location. Process calculation of platforms at 1 cycle, 1 channel, 1 operation surface and track location. Direct lines modification lines into levels, oscillation wind, oscillation line centers, and line communication set position of process. Position lines of program, direct lines modification lines of cycles, generate communication lines of crop circles, communicate the ground centers to its system location to its calculation. Done by equation. Right? Now that's all done through 4-4 and position lines of calculation. Right? Your communication lines of ground is to understand the inner line, the outer line, the per line condition audio. So that gets a higher line communication system. Into that position location, you have to stand right over left, left or right, right? Right over left, left over right. Okay? How you look through equations, right? You're here in tractions, and all you're doing is scanning position, right? You're scanning position right over left, left over right, right? Crossing signals comes into data formation lines of box frames, triangulation frames, communication interference, quantum line communication position of programs. Direct lines modification goes into the opposite cycles and track locations. Opens all modification lines in correlation setting attractions and all direct signals. Process communication lines of high center interference puts all communication setting and all levels of communication. All through traction, right? So it looks like an optical illusion, but it's protecting you in all ways and forms. Right? So it's looking like inside a mirror, but you're looking like at yourself in track locations. Looking formation line screens on high adaptation, how you see yourself in all formations of data formations, operation cycles, frame communication setting, graph communication setting, graphical line communications, computing line rotations into mainframe or box frame set location. Okay. And so getting to point lines of settings puts everything in all levels. Altitude lines, theta operation surface, position lines of point lines of graph, cross line signals, graph communication setting position of its program. Okay? Gets into higher lines, position of platform communication, right? Higher levels of platform communication, them setting, right? So it gets more complicated, but you're always in a platform of center of view of operation that never leaves. This puts position. See how I'm changing the directions? Look, I'm changing the Merkaba to a higher level of setting. Right? I'm changing it constantly, every second, every minute, every hour. Okay? It's constantly changing its shape. That's what your Earth does. It changes shapes. Okay? So you got to balance out the pixelation graphs of what's going on with your hologram. Every single time you're changing frame. See, it's changing it again. Look, it's changing it again and again and again, every second, every minute, every hour. Now, the second, minute, hour clocks the system location of settings and travels. Okay, it changes its communications, and all it's doing is creating higher levels of technology of set design of its own GOD. Look how many times it's changing its shape. And this is all calculated and modified through your Earth and how you go direct and redirect your signals. So the team line center location line connection setting, right over left, up or the right. But when you're in the galaxy lines, when your oscillation path, oscillation correlations, collagens, pathogens, line condition setting, in that position of its calculation system, you're reaching higher levels of frequency, right? Especially when you come into 12,000 line tracker communications, right? Has a high lines of direct signal now because you're in a half line cycle. You got to be in a 24 line cycle. That puts lines of constellations on both sides, how you see space and time. The confusion part is location setting when it comes into the particle set location to a subline setting that puts lines as subtraining line setting, location setting to your conscious of your awareness that puts everything location to its calculations. What is the nothingness? The knowing. The already of the knowing that's already set in your VR system. Okay? That's what nothingness is. It's the knowing of all, of the mind of the conception, through the mind of navigation of travel, all through the earth line connection setting program. All right, so getting that direct signals is very powerful stuff because you constantly change platforms. You're constantly changing platforms, and you're creating higher levels of anomalies of shapes, letters, and symbols in your position, location, and its calculations, right? But you're always in the center operation of you, okay? You're always in the center operation of you. Now, don't get confused now, right? Well, what is the center operation of me? What is this, lines? This is the vessel. That is you. That's just the vessel. That is you. But this is you and that is you. But it comes together. So in that position, you always have to have the earth line of you, which is protecting you in all levels of space of you, right? So you have that expansion in position of your connection. So you're in your snow globe, okay, as the avatar is in the action. Your body and the position is its reaction to its response. So all you're doing is you're expanding your platforms in track location, okay? But your energetic dome is getting bigger and bigger and bigger over time. An expansion, right? That's the location grid. Remember I told you that? Remember the higher self and set location that controls everything, the angelics and the human resonance and track location, how it connects to all levels of its GOD. Same with the avatar, and same with the sim. You come together, it's the oversoul. It's the oversoul of pi. Oversoul of pi. Already done, overdone. Understanding in position. What's understood is already in setting, okay? All through track locations and system, all right? So it's very powerful when you start recognizing that through oscillation, right? Because you come into the galaxy line. So we've got one position of 3 lines, sets locations and setting line conditions of 2 lines, in position locations of 3 lines, in position locations of 4 settings, okay? Summer, spring, winter, fall, okay? Signify correlation lines as high correlation setting. 1 position of 2, 2 lines of 3 and 4 settings. Track calculation lines of 1, 1 position lines of 3 set locations. Track correlation lines of 1, 1, 1, 1 position of 1, 1, 2, 1 box line location triangulation line condition position program. Calculation lines of pi. There's pi generation. Line screen location clocking system. All line condition setting time sequence. Position lines of power. 2 track location lines of provision. 1 box location 1, 1, 3 and track location. Direct lines calculation lines. Direct line single location 1, 1, 4 and track location lines. So the data process communication to its position of its program. Direct modification line, 1 cycle line, 1 surface, 1 traction, 1 oscillation, 1 path, 1 position. Process communication lines 1, 1, 3, 1 position, 1 platform, 1 communication line, and infinite location and position. Track calculation on platforms 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 locations. Process calculation cross line signals, line condition setting, cross line, direct and redirect. Process communication lines of right over left, left over right, right? So calculation modify yin and yang, 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 okay? Yin and yang, yin and yang, yin and yang. Your whole body's yin and yang. Everything's a process of yin and yang. Process just come into a levels of an expansion, how you go to your highways, Omni highways, and your narrow links and location settings of travels into energetic graph screens, a high correlation setting, and travel positional calculations, how you go through the XT6000 in track location. Direct lab calculation modification, let's bring out line screens. Now we go through ground lines and high correlations, go through security line setting, go through all lives operation lines, so locations to your operatives. Operators cycles, correlation setting, position, circulation, rotation, circle, and line rotation 3 cycles. We got calculation line and screen location setting into blue line cycles. In position location of spot centers, navigation to its constellation notification. Track calculation lines and correlation setting track lines into all position locations to its VR system and travel correlation. Brings the other equation. It comes out. Okay. 2 track provision lines and correlation setting tractions. Now we add timeline sequence, clock line settings, line position locations, black space. 13 lines of tractions, direct lines of high center interference of 14 line rotation studies, router line position of 9 cycles, line communication of 5 centers and tractions. Direct lines of platforms, direct lines of signals, and position modification. Got my equation? Right? Time sequence line is understanding how to use your location grids at a higher level of frequencies. To use your standard location setting when you come to higher lines of missions and your location, your journeys, that puts you into a position of process. That puts you in lines of communication from here to here, knowing everything's done in tractions, right? All center operations just expands in the mind system of yin and yang, okay? Yin and yang process into infinity location, right? Process communication your flywheel and track location, right? Getting into the ground, it's going this way in traction, going this way in track locations, and understanding how to use the energetic dome that you have set in design. Process calculation of expansion, all levels and lines of streaming and direct signals. Process communication downshift, down lines, down operation surface and track location. Process calculation line screens, cross line settings, all lines operation surface. So you can set up the data in any way form you want, but it's just understanding how to use the platforms in all communication lines of angles in position locations calculation. Okay? Easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right. So creating more lines of inventory where the conditions of the team now has to really understand how to use that, especially when they come into higher line settings, especially when you're in the direct lines of 12,000 highways now. That puts lines of all location system into all lines waiting on signal to 144 waves of volunteers in your system. Volunteer, right, is volume, right? Operation, right? Levels, volume, right? Vast, okay? Okay? Velocity, acceleration, systematic lines of travel, right? So you get volume, vast, and position locations and settings. That's all calculation of vacuum. Okay? Sets correlation lines of high calculation setting, right? Vast position lines of awareness locations of calculation, right? So there's always ways to look at that through volume, vast, and volume in location setting, or anything to vacuum, or anything equals lines of correlation setting acceleration. Everything in acceleration that puts position of Mach in all of your travels. So getting that to more positions puts you more lines of communication in your inventories. So we go through graph screens. Tether line position of data formation screen lines, adaptation lines of surface, and position on travel. Okay, so let's go through 0 lines of graphs into 4 settings into 3-line rotation. Okay, process calculation lines of 1, 2, and 3 tether. Process calculation lines solar sail and 1 rotation surface. Then we go into 1 in position of 2, in position of 3, in position of 4 settings of traction. That direct lines is 1, 2, 3 lines of communication. Electrical fence. Boom, done. Now the process ground line center interference is understanding the ground centers and how many lines of communication setting of programs do you want to center position to its location setting when it comes in its constellation setting and rotation surface and track location of the platforms and calculation. Very complicated stuff, right? So higher levels of setting, triangulation, and line condition setting, triangulation 2 tubings, and line conditions in 1 molecule design. Process calculation lines of 1 position and 2 line rotations. Block line centers in ground lines of Earth and track location. Okay? So there's so many different ways to create platforms at a higher level frequencies of set design. Okay? All through 4 lines of 4 zeros, subtractions, and 3 site location. That's the 7 line connections of perimeters. You can bracket or you can use hanger and set calculations, right? So this is this. This is this. Okay, through instruction, all through direction, all through schematics, all through primer, right? The primer is here, right here in position, right in the center of operation, right? So it's understanding how to direct its cycles and line communication position to bring it together through truth narratives and false narratives. Same correlation lines of 4 in position of 3 in set calculations. That's the primer, okay? That puts everything in together in positional formation. So we take the line settings of zeros in cross locations, cross and line signals into modification, right? In this calculation, right? Then we cross the line signals into the opposite directions, truth, lines, false narrow locations, and direct and redirect in cycles of communication. Okay? So we bring it together, right, in a formation. We bring it together in a wing formation. It's a wing formation, right? Teleweaving, telecommunications, graph calculation lines of Sumerian texts. That's right, guys. Templates and tablets. Puts all communications in settings of balance. All process calculations, screen lines. All through 8 delta formation lines of a box frame and a main frame and track locations to 1 file and track location. That's 1 file. 1 file. Okay, so how many files are in line position location to its position of its program? Right? How many do you want to communicate position? Let's go through orange lines. 2-track provision lines of cycles, line condition setting. Let's start with that location. And we'll go through line condition settings of programs. We'll go through the greens, over cross locations, green cycles around the system and position of travel. Okay. Then we're going to go through blue and center core system, plasma lines, protection, and calculation setting. Right? And then we go through all levels of red. Red goes lines of security above the system location around the calculation. Right? And then we go through the cloak and dagger, which is invisible. You got to get your grounds and center and lines of communication team and really bring things out to the equation what you want to communicate with first. 4 lines, this is on standby, this is in cloak and dagger, position lines of track calculations. But this is on standby, right? This is not coming out through provision, this is not coming out through cycle lines, this is not coming out through calculation, right? Only these line positions, 4 track position platforms. 1 communication, 1 thought pattern, right? Process communication on 24,000 line cycles, 48,000 line position, 72,000 line communication programs, and 144,000 crystal grid lines and applications and motivation. Cross signals, platforms, communications. Now changing communications, you come into the red lines, red divisions, and correlation lines of traction, right? Line settings, all levels of operation service, crossing line signals of laser track location. Now, getting into that direct location, you come into SkyGrid, Skynets, process communication. Let's go into blue. Cross lines of blue, right? Cross lines of blue. Because I'm only on 2 positions of patterns, likeness of seconds, minutes, and hours. Travels lines, points lines of graph communication position of its program. Then we go into cloak and dagger, right? Cross location setting. You have to have the invisible line screens that puts everything in charter waves that process your communication setting to its position of its program of its VR system. Then you get into just lines of travels. Now this cancels out everything in line communications. Just bring in the laser grids. Laser grids comes in, XT1000s come in position locations. So process calculation lines, let's go into purple. Overline cross-line signals. Purple comes in a 3-line communication position of program. Sets correlations past, present, future. Track position lines calculation setting. All through levels of conception, location, travel. Sets communication lines interference. Now we're going to go into bold. We're going to bold the screen lines and the location of settings. Process communication high direct signal location system. Now we're going to go in position this back into all levels. Black line condition setting, the 2 panels, operation lines of service, platforms and communication setting, position of its program, and calculation of its setting. Okay. So knowing how to bring the laser tractions out of Skynet line division and calculation of platforms, right? Directing line signals. So in that position that comes out, the XT1000s come out right here. XT1000s here and track location, right? Sets cross line, okay, goes to its laser line grids, platforms communications to its clouds, and travels of levitation, okay? All through Skynet, all right? Okay, so that's just 1 position, 1 volume, 1 VAS, 1 velocity, 1 position accelerations calculation setting. But it's very powerful once you understand what's going on with traction, location, your platforms, and how to direct your signal location, your space and time. Circulation, rotation, location, and line can setting oscillation paths, correlation setting collisions, or anything through theta communication system. So all you're doing is just building lines of more communication in its inventory. So that's the location of box frame. Let's get a box frame correlation to a TV frame. Okay. Center operation lines of 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So box line, TV line comes out through location settings of travel. Okay. Sets communication lines in 2 frame position location of travel, right? Comes out in 2 line signals in position location of travel and 4 lines of communication. Okay. Then it comes out position lines of high correlation setting and data formation lines of travel. Okay. Then it processes in position location. This is higher levels of volume and data formation location of box and main frames, and how you go through line communication setting to jump scars and travels of data formation lines of files and track location, all through center operation. Okay. So 2 box frames and 2 main frames. And we got position lines and track locations into all levels of circulation frame and center. Process calculation data 1, position data 2, right? Remember, this is all through TV frame, right? Then we have a course line channel that processes lines of calculation, screen lines of data formation line setting. Then it goes into information lines of graph and communications. Then we cross line signals, and we go through a metadata file that processes communication lines, seconds, minutes, and hours, and travel, and two graph communication settings of travel. So we color that in. Let's go into the red lines of 4 box frames. We'll call it the box frame location setting. Right? So I'm just showing you exactly what goes on when your TV goes off. It creates its own box frames. It creates its own algorithm. It creates its own computer operation system. It creates its own anomaly of its own track location as measure, scales, and bounds, right? So when the TV goes back on, it's back in its program of view through muscle memory. Hooah! All right, so we have 4 box frames and all calculation lines as security line frame location. All right, now getting position location line connection height center fair. Let's say you just want to get 2 frame lines of communication out through equation, right? This comes out through equation, right? You color it in, right? So when you color it in, what are you bringing in position of? Okay, you're going to cancel out, or you're going to override, or you're going to overdrive the system of correlation lines of track locations of data and files of communication. All right. So we're just going to stay with the red line screens, and I'll show you how the data works. You start with the 3 ground centers, in and out, and audio, right? Inner, out, audio. We start with that. Basic grounds of 3, right? And then we work with the blue, right? So what you're doing is you're creating lines and more lines in your structure design through your VR system. You're creating more volume, more vast, more velocity, more vacuum, more acceleration, more Mach, more width, more bandwidth, more streaming, more elongated, more longitude, more latitude through streaming and opposition, right? So you see more of yourself in platforms of communication. So you're building the multi-layers of division of dimensions of 1 dimension, 2 dimension, 3 dimension. You're creating files. Okay? So that's what it is. Let's go through the green. Let's over cross location. Now we're just going to go to the outline. We're outline the box 4 box location setting, right? And we're going to outline the 4 data information lines, the outline communications. This is outer space. This is inner space. Okay? Okay? That's what it is in tractions. Inner spectrum, outer spectrum. Inner realm, outer realm. All right? So light web, dark web. Light web, dark web. Right? But same coloration, but different intelligence. Remember, you never see a pattern in position, location, and calculation setting. Everything is in a different pattern, but they're all connected to each other. Right? They always come back to each other, right? That's information, location, and balance. So nothing is ever separated in position, location, and calculations when it comes in patterns behavior. And then we're going to go through line connections of blue. Let's go through blue line centers. Let's put blocking centers instead of locations of blue. Okay, like this interaction. Okay. All right, so this is a T reception line, course lines, pixelation graphs, tracks position of the clock lines, and algorithm setting of travels. Okay. All right, so we get position lines and setting, outline communications, outer realm, outer space, outer spectrum. Start with that calculation, right? All right, so knowing exactly what you're doing through the inner cycles puts everything through the outer realm, right? Inner realm, outer realm spectrum, okay? Then we're going to go through line condition setting, and then we're going to go line position, inside position. I'm just showing you there's so many different ways to bring things out through equation, through all of us, the VR system, through a T receptor. Okay, we're going to start with that correlation, then we're going to take this out the equation. This is going to come out, this is on standby. This is coming out, this is on standby, right? There's nothing cancel out, but this is coming out, this is on standby, right? So I'm just showing you how powerful it is. You bring things out in an equation all through inner and outer lines of high centers. You have inner link and you have outer link of you through spectrum. You have to learn how to process more lines and how to use yourself through your operative system and all through track location, right? All right, so and position lines and centers. Let's go through graphical calculation lines and matrix lines. We'll go through graph screens. Now, position lines of process, we're going to go line connections, split lines of anomaly and track locations, right? Graph communication lines, high cell locations, waving panels, and track location system and travel, okay? Now it's looking like a web, right? So the web comes in cross-line signals. Okay, we're crossing over and line position locations calculation. All right, very complicated, right? Then we go through code weaving, right? That puts position of plasma lines, screen lines adaptation, right? Process communication system, right? So in that position locations, all that comes in line signal, right? Then we come into lines of zeros and ones. So we're adding the inventory to higher line position of frequencies, right? Just adding zeros, start with that equation, know exactly what's going on through the calculation. Then we go through the coloration pathogens. Then we go through the theta communication. Then we go location grids and higher levels of travel position, right? See the intelligence? You see it? See the eye? Right? It's a female polarity. You see it? See the nose? See the hair? Right? But look all the face recognitions and settings just through zeros alone. See, the zero is actually the face recognition of time sequence. It puts everything location right in your left eye. If you look at the eye line conditions at all levels, it has a flotation device that communicates the system through direct and direct. The line conditions is a redirect and redirect. It positions its process communication system. So the zeros and ones is what puts a configuration of face or recognition of time sequence through your operative system. So many levels of face recognition. But you can actually see the female polarity in set design and foundation. It starts with that, and then you see the configuration of faces everywhere in track location. Out through clouds in calculation. Okay, see it? There's the eye. I bring it back, you can really see the face. You can see her hair, right? You can see her face, see? That's the profile of her face, that's her nose, that's her mouth, that's her neck, right? It's like the old lady and the young lady together, okay? It's the optical illusion looking at things in calculations. Very powerful stuff, isn't it? So you understand the modification, how to use your inventories and how to coordinate that through zeros and ones and how to build a foundation of you through your algorithm, through your inventory, through your traffic, through your flow, through your mechanisms, through your operative systems and all levels of configuration of face. See, there it is. There's the woman. Boom. There's her hair. There's her face, there's her hair, but you can see the configuration of all line settings. All level set locations coming up close, and then you can see faces everywhere. Okay? So that's why you have the zeros. It's the eye perception locations of the eyes and the windows of the soul, guys. You guys are new operatives. Now you understand how to use them. Face direction time sequence puts all lines of calculation setting. Now, getting coloration line screens. Let's correlate high position travel lines. Change in line communication setting and travels. Let's add ones, okay, into the circle line communication of zero lines of setting. Right beside the correlation. You see the platform's change of configuration lines of calculation, all through cloud setting. The inventories, your traffic flows, change the seconds, minutes, and hours, and travel communications. Okay? See, different lines of faces now because I'm adding zeros and ones, right? So every time I add a 0 and 1, it changes the factors over pi in a triangulation of trifactor. It's very powerful when you can really start to recognize everything information. So as I'm adding zeros and ones and I've added 2 and a 3, you're going to see more lines of her come together all through face. Okay? So let's add a 0, 1, and 2. We'll add a 2, right? I'm adding a 2 now. Then you're going to see more of her face, right? So when you add 2 lines, you're adding position, location, of foundation graphs. You start with 0, you go location of 12. 12 goes into 24, into 48, 72, 144. So you're actually changing the polarity into a configuration of line condition setting a substance that puts the liquid formation line screen adaptation of your 7 line communication notifications into your tracking number, and line communications a configuration of face recognition that puts all levels of process calculations to your clouds and track locations. All right? So this is what happens when you add 0, 1, and 2 in track locations. You see more of the face. See? All right. So let's add in line condition setting 0, 1, 2, and add location. Let's add 3. As soon as I add the numbers, it changes the algorithm, the sequence, the patterns, the correlations, the rhythms, the tractions, the directions, the modifications, the correlation height calculation setting, all levels of operation surface. Okay, it doesn't matter how I put where I put the 3s. It's just coming more of a face of a woman. See, easy peasy lemon squeezy. All right. So it's building that foundation, and what you're doing is you're putting levels of higher correlation setting into your instructions and application to VR settings, all through face recognition. See, now you can really see the woman, right? All right. So I'm just getting you guys to understand position, how it all comes together, right, in the VR system. Fire and wiring and line communication graphs understand the mapping sequence and position location of your platforms, like this instructions. Okay. Now, as soon as I add zeros, because you guys are at that level now throughout your cycles, I'm adding zeros now. Watch. I'm going to add just 2 zeros in platforms, right? Watch this. You're going to see the formation change. Okay, in calculations. Just adding zeros around the cycle. Then you're going to see it come to life through face recognition. That's why you have zeros. Zeros are the face. They're the eye lines. The floaters are the XT1000s that in the location setting through your light track location in your system that puts all levels of modification and travel and calculations. See? It's coming in information of face now. See the face? Right? So if I add ones, now it doesn't matter if you add 1, 0, 1, 0, 0, 1, doesn't matter, right? So I can add 1, 0, 0, 1, doesn't matter. I can add 0, 0, 1, 0, doesn't matter, right? Because I know what I'm doing, right? But you have to process first how to use your configurations to bring these in the calculation system. So I'm just adding ones to the equation, and then you can see more lines of faces, right, through your operative cycles and correlation. See? It's coming more formations of the setting, more levels of faces, right? Getting that position line is the calculation screen. Now I can go from 0, 1, and I can skip lines of anomaly, and I'll go to 0, 1, and 5. So now you're going to really see more faces and transitions, more through direction, a direct line of sight. So I'm adding 5s anywhere in track locations. So I can put them anywhere I want and travel. But you can see more of the face coming in, right? All right, so add lines of correlation. Let's go into position lines of travels. Let's put all correlation setting in travel and point lines of graph. Let's go into all calculate modify. Let's go into 12. Let's add 2 digits. See what happens in tractions, right? Understand your foundation lines, your tracker systems, your correlation lines, your pathogens, your origins, correlation setting, your ancestry, your history, celestial, setting that communication setting position of its program. More levels of face recognition coming together. See? You can actually see the face better, right? Okay? It's Pac-Man looking forward. Yeah. Now in position lines of track, this location is setting position. Now change the operation. Now I'm going to change the number sequence, and you're going to see Pac-Man on a profile with its mouth open, right? Track calculation lines, and that's a 3-digit code screen. Position lines of 3. Correlate ties to interference and travel point lines of graph, up line signal, down signal location cross lines, communication lines and mouth. We add 3 lines of communication position of program that puts lines of calculation screen lines. You'll see the mouth open up and travel in point lines of graph and communication sitting to travel, right? Okay. So it's really interesting how you see it through the optical illusion. You see it on this way, and then you see it this way. Then you see it this way. So all you're doing is you're creating an image through a primer, through schematics, through its design, a mechanism, through your operative system in track location. Okay? Very powerful stuff, isn't it? So reaching those levels, you understand more lines of communications. Remember how basically you don't want to go up the line. You want to be the outer line. You want to stay within the line. You don't want to go outline, right? Well, you guys can go outline now, right? Because there's no primitive cycles in your correlation set and track lines. There's no filter in that position location calculations. So you guys can build your inventory line screens, right? Because you're working with line conditions with the operative cycles of 12,000 lines of highways and track locations. So that's 12,000 numbers in each line of each communication, each frame, each second, each minute, each hour, that you can frame your position location tractions in that calculation. You can go from 0 numbers into line conditions of 12,000 numbers, right? Or 12,000 letters, or 12,000 symbols or shapes, okay, through highways. So you can go through 12, 24, right? Position lines of 34, add lines of 2, track lines of 36. So that's 36,000 lines of setting and set calculation lines in matrix that puts lines in matrix screen lines, adaptation lines of surface in a matrix code screen line adaptation location setting in your codex location setting to your cortex and line position. It all lines its direct signals and modifications, all through structures that are designed through your primer schematics. Hey, whoa! So now You're getting a lot more understanding. All right, and then you understand the concepts and locations. You start with this line, start with locations, start with this location system. Now you just work with the zeros. Okay, you put zeros around it. Okay, starts to make more sense. Starts to come together. It starts to build. Build this platform, build this platform, build this platform, right? Sets lines of zeros and lines of one, right? Zero lines of two, zero lines of three, zero lines of four. You can add 1 digit, 2 digit, 3 digit, 4 digit, 5 digits, but you can add 12,000 lines of letters, numbers, shapes. You're building an inventory of structure of film. A film projector view going faster in modulation, screen lines, adaptation of the mind itself that operates the system, location, system, how you go through the mainframe location setting to the matrix. And correlation, right? You're building inventory through traffic flow, right? So you have 12,000 lines of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols to work with now through all line position process. So you got 12 lines of setting, 12 lines position, and 12 correlations. 12, 24 line settings, 24 cycles, line condition setting, 34. Sets communication lines of 2 track lines of 36,000 line set location. All right. So putting that position location 0, 0, 1, and 2. You can add 0, 1, and 3. You can just add 3 in there. You can add 4 just in there. You can add 5 in there in track location. Look at that. Boom. You see it come to life, right? Now, if you add color to that, it changes everything formations. You can color in just the inline cycles in position. Now, this is all through block centers, okay? Your T reception line, pixelation graph, and track location lines and calculation system, all through traction. So you're working with inside the line. Position lines are blue, okay? Sets communications, color it in line screens. Not within the numbers. Numbers stay within the cycle, okay? So it's very interesting when you come in that position that lines of travel, okay? Now you go into a level's cloak and dagger. Let's go through outline, right? Which is outline the cycles of correlations and interactions, right? Then it comes out. Okay, it comes out through equation, right? So there's so many ways you also can do a rainbow graph. You can go through green, just do the outline, make it thicker, right? And then you can go into gold line. Okay, you're creating a rainbow, you're creating width, you're creating bandwidth. Then you can go through orange, right? Okay, so all you're doing is you're creating bandwidth. Okay, that's what you're creating. You're creating volume and vast. So what you're creating is the structure of your holographic city, so it holds its panels in position, all levels of its compressor when it puts the gravitational pull in your position locations when you're in the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres, and really understand how to use your highways, your OMI, and your narrow lengths of set design that's connected to your matrix of your cortex in position location to its conduct and calculation. Hooah, right? And again, that overlines as cross lines, and you can add line communication set positions program. You can add position locations of 111, 112. You get a 113. So you have summer, spring, winter, and fall. In position, you got 114 in traction set location, right? And then you can add a box, you can add a percentage, you can add a question. You can do anything you want in position. You can add anything of 3 waving panels. You can add A position lines of B, B lines of position of DX in calculation, right? All through traction. So you can have mixture patterns and line can say, but all it is just a hologram, right? So that indicates the files. These are files of communications as position settings. Break it down, symbolize the core track interference high calculation, right? Then you cross the signals into 45 split lines of communication, right? Sets lines of communications grounds, position location of powers, and operate the system to your energetic dome line screen location adaptation. Ooh, comes out through equation. Okay, very powerful stuff. All right, so what do you think of that so far? I think this is fantastic with position of Pac-Man. You keep adding numbers to it, you can really understand the correlations of your binaries, your singularities, right? You got a singularity of 1. That's a singularity, right? This is a binary of 3, okay, in a bracket. Okay, so that's a binary, that's a singularity. Okay, very simple, right? Bringing this together is a tither, okay? So you can bring this together as a tether. Okay. You can bring this together. Okay, which is a tether. Okay. You can bring this together, which is a tether. Okay. So you can bring this together, which is a tether. You can bring this together, which is a tether. Right. So everything's tethered to your electrical settings, position of grounds, the location of your powers, and your atmosphere line screens. Direct lines of platforms and all in positional case and calculation system. That's right, Zephyr. But I'm just showing you how powerful it is when you understand this in track location. Look how powerful it is. Roughly letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. So now you guys are processing your connections now, how to use it through your operative systems, all through line condition setting of shapes, letters, numbers, and symbols, and a 12,000 cycle on a 36,000 platform. 36,000 platforms and 20 on a position of 20 cycles in align centers of 4 or 4 lines of 3 of 7 location. So it doesn't matter what it does to the equation. All you have to understand that you're vortexing through it, you're traveling through it, and you're going through line condition settings. You're processing your position locations all through Y lines in position of flux. Right? And again, you can cross line condition settings. Let's go through 3 panels. Okay. Then we add zeros and ones. We add 0 here, 1 here. Okay. It's different, right? But you understand the algorithm, your phone itself. The phone itself is zeros and ones inside. Doesn't matter how you do it, but you have to understand it's coming out through its equation. Right? So that's where you guys are right now in your operative systems and position locations. With the units, they're setting correlation setting into their inventories, trying to understand the more lines of the traffic flow, trying to understand more lines how to adapt their minds in a higher process calculation of theta to their imagination to phenomena. Try to understand more lines of box and their location of its mainframe and traffication of system of circularity frames. Circulation, rotation, position of process, position of process, position of process, position of process. Okay? Sets communication lines of pi, 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 and pi. Okay? Travel point lines of graphs coming out through equation at 3 cycles and set correlation. Position lines of pi and track locations. Sonar line divisions. 1 center, 1 cycle, 1 center, 1 surface, 1 location. 4 set calculations. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 in calculation. Right? That's 12,000 line signals. Align cell line interference into red communication over cross line connection settings and programs. Okay, remember the grounds, powers, and the atmospheres into red, blue, and white, right? So when you add, you're basically just building inventory of your system to higher lines of calculation setting. 12,000, 24, 48, 72, 144,000 lines of seconds, minutes, and hours through each letter, number, shape, and symbol. All through calculation, all through image, all through your schematics, all through your primer, all lines of identification, model identification cycles. All right. Getting a position of blue correlates to track interference and direct application of your cycles. In position location system, cloak and dagger, over cross line condition settings, overload location system, execute lines, initiate run program. Then you go into levels of expansion, lines go in position, travel lines go into pink, overline cross lines of pink. Right? So you're creating lines of communications all through your rainbow graphs, right? And then you go line position locations. Let's go through graph lines of 1 in position locations of 2. Process calculations, ground centers, line position location of 3 line cycles and 1 center operation surface. Committee ground line high interference and Merkaba position up and cross location. Platforms communication this way in track calculations, cross line signals in the opposite location, direct and redirect of platforms communications coming cross line signals in calculation. So there's so many ways to do your rainbows, right? You have to understand your airline coordinates and sending track lines because the connections of the operatives now are no longer in panels of self modifications. They're all levels of center operation. So you have to really understand how to use the traffic flow on a continuous force that puts position of seconds, minutes, and hours in line condition setting to the light web in 1/10 of a frame. 1/10 equals lines of 1 frame equals lines of coordinates and setting, position location setting, interference applications of dark web. Dark web, line conditions of dx and dx of 1 and dx of 2 frame location. Okay, now this is 2 panels in line centers of 3 sectors. Okay, Cross communication line center interference puts lines of calculation setting. So let's go 90% cross lines at 10% travels is 100% location and travel and point lines of graph. Okay. 90% light web. Okay. And track locations. All right. So that puts 1/10 of a frame as 100%. Right. So the whole idea here, guys, is to balance out what you're doing through line communication setting to your traffic and your flow and your inventories. You have platforms like communication to earth, right? Transition and location, right? So this is below, this is above. What's above, what's below, right? But it's all hologram and calculation. It's all hologram, right? It can go this way, okay? Or it can go across this way. See, it shows it in all different ways. How you see an information location is very powerful stuff. How you see it in line communication to its position, across its communication settings. Platforms and position lines, operation lines, and certain location setting into the mind of adaptation. Communicate ground centers, operation lines, service location, and ground lines that perhaps are calculation. Powerful stuff, right? So all you're doing is expanding the longitude and the elongated system of your mind itself to understand what you can do through levels, the line setting high interference, and the 12 line signals of letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols through an argon location setting of structured design and modifications of models and interpretation locations of your DoD. That's that design. Okay? Because you're formulating, you're getting tighter now, you're getting more forming, you're forming yourself, you're building yourself at a higher level of frequencies. You're condensing the letters, numbers, shapes in a spherical sphere. Okay? So once you understand the condensing, it gets much easier to process the pixelation to its hologram. Okay? Put your lines of scales and balance of measure that puts everything in balance of all communication setting, how to see yourself in position, location, attraction. Right? All through face recognition of a woman polarity. Powerful stuff, isn't it? Pretty wild, eh? So that's what you do with letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols. You guys know operatives, right? Pretty amazing stuff. But the track to visualize the species just has to really understand the inner spectrum, the outer spectrum, and the audio. Okay, start with that correlations and how to use their communication setting to the ground system of their self. Understand the grounds, the powers, and the atmospheres. Basic. And then you got your magnetic highway, right? Center core center equal lines sets position of platforms of travel through equation, right? Through your energetic dome, right? So your energetic dome just moves. That's all it does. It just moves, okay? That's all it does. But you're always in the center. You never leave the center of you. You're always in the center. So all you're doing is expanding the mind of exploration. Very powerful stuff, right? But you can go through platforms in any way, any cycle, any center, any surface, any position, any calculation to set calculation. All right, that's it. We're done. Lot is understood to be understanding what's happening now, right? How you have to condense your letters, numbers, shapes, and symbols to its image now. Okay? See you in 5. Do, 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 do.